Okay, hey guys, I wanted to do a video here about a show that I'm a pretty big fan of. I would say it's probably not even top five. I would say it's probably number one at this point. I mean, it's a show that like has a huge cult following that like nowadays is like everyone's fucking talking about it. But for me, I don't think that like degrades its importance at all. In fact, quite the contrary, because I think a lot of people like it because it's so good. But I think it's Twin Peaks, if you haven't guessed already. But I know there's a lot of analysis out there. I don't think I could ever devote like a whole like channel to it like some of these people are, just because my priorities are elsewhere and I want to talk about a lot of stuff. But it is a pretty significant show for me, so I decided I want to do a video, maybe a series of videos on it. I don't know. My stuff corresponds more to the Jay Dyer type analysis, to where it's sort of like analyzing some of the more the occult or hidden meanings that might be behind it, as well as just sort of like the normal sort of existential surrealist type vibe that Lynch and Frost go with the show. But I don't know. Like I've been a big fan of the series since the beginning days, all for the first two seasons and Fire Walk with Me. And I think this third season is just amazing. I've seen every single episode. And there's a lot to say about it, but I'd say like the final two episodes, episodes 17 and 18, just like really just they really they shook me to my core, basically. Just words can't even really like describe. But there's a few things. Okay, so in 17 and 18, it's revealed that like the overall arching evil, like we know the main evil in the series is Bob, is the demonic spirit Bob, who at different times inhabited different people. During the first series, it inhabited Leland, and possibly that other guy who was a villain for the second series, who died. But I forget what his name is. But it inhabited Leland, and then they killed Leland, and Leland went to the light apparently, and then Bob went off into the ether, and he went back to the White Lodge, and then at the end of the second season, Cooper goes into the what is it, Black Lodge? The White or the Black Lodge, or I think it's the Black Lodge, the Hell Lodge, and he discovers, eventually he discovers Bob there as his doppelganger. So he essentially becomes possessed by his doppelganger, and then like comes out, and there's other alters. There's the other alter is Dougie. It's confusing. But point of the matter is like he comes out as like the evil Coop, and that's like the main like antagonist throughout the third season. Okay, so essentially at the end of episode 17, long story short, like they kill the evil Cooper, we think, and then the ghost, like the Bob demon spirit, comes out, and like the guy with the fisticuffs, the green fist, through trial and error, eventually kills the demon spirit Bob. And you'd think that'd be probably in a normal traditional series that might be like the traditional way to like end it. And then they have like, oh, you killed the great villain, congratulations, and it ends with like on a cheery note, like lights and sunshine and like a wedding or something, But of course, this being Lynch, he rails against expectations, so of course he wasn't going to end it on such like a tidy note, because in many ways that's where like it really gets like fucking interesting. So, and there's a part like right after that happens, it's like Cooper's head is just like superimposed over like this one scene where a whole bunch of characters are just like talking in the sheriff's department, and Cooper's head is just like superimposed, like projected over top, and you're like, what the fuck is going on? And then like at some point, like in between the conversation, hold on, give me a second. Okay, I thought someone was here. Anyway, in between he's discussing like what just happened, yada yada yada. It's like the projection of Cooper says, he says, it's all a dream. And there's many ways to interpret this. For me, I think maybe on one level, in many ways, Twin Peaks and really like Lynch's like work as a whole is a comment on just sort of like the illusory realm that we live in. You know, on Blue Velvet, he was all about, you know, showcasing, like, it's all about showcasing, breaking open surface reality and like showcasing the worlds beneath, whether they be negative worlds or they be positive worlds. You know, in Blue Velvet, and similarly to Twin Peaks, it was about like showcasing a place that on the surface is like small town, you know, white picket fences and, you know, churches and everyone behaving, you know, positive with each other. But if you go down beneath the surface, like the camera goes down onto that lawn of that just normal suburban house, and you see like all these like noxious beetles swarming around, and it's supposed to be symbolism for like the evil, or at least that one aspect, that one world is lurking beneath, is like the world's sort of evil. You know, beneath the sort of sun-soaked facade. Not that I don't believe like that's the only realm. I think there's many layers beneath the surface level, which are both positive and negative, and also ones that are more enigmatic, as Twin Peaks exposes, like stuff ineffable. Realms that have an ineffable aura about them. You can't figure out where exactly they stand, the good, evil chart. There's one thing I wanted to talk about. So in the 17th episode, Gordon Cole's character reveals that there's an enemy, a demonic sort of entity that's even more powerful and more overarching than Bob, and that's one they call the character Jal Day, which loosely translates to Judy, which is the character that back in Fire Walk With Me, David Bowie's character talks about. We're not gonna talk about Judy. We're not gonna talk about her at all. You know, that sort of thing. So, and it was just a big mystery, one of many with the show, endless mysteries with the show, of who Judy was. And in the 17th episode, Gordon Cole, FBI Director Gordon Cole, reveals that Judy is Jal Day, this ancient evil, sort of like demonic devil type energy character. and this is interesting, and this is something I haven't heard anyone else talk about, is that back in like episode 9 or 10, something like that, there was that scene where it's like back in the 50s, and like they're out in the desert, and this big like atom bomb type thing erupts, and you can hear it going off before. It's like 3, 2, 1. So it seems like an atom bomb being tested, and all of a sudden like we get into like 20 minutes, half-hour sequence that, you know, of like this like of this evil energy like spewing forth from the explosion that goes off to the netherworlds with the White Lodge and Black Lodge, and Bob's in there, and this big like toxic evil smoke, which eventually like after that leads to like the woodsmen, the demonic woodsmen characters first being seen and killing people, and the insect enters little girls. Which actually, the more that I think about it, because it's kind of a mystery who that little girl was. So the little girl might be, Laura Palmer's mother, and that might explain like why she's fucked up and why she has that ability to like open up her face and like pounce at people, and like why at the very end of the episode 18, like why there's still evil that needs to be dealt with. Maybe that was some foreshadowing there, but more on that later. So it's this big like evil that comes out from this explosion. And what I thought when I had seen that, and a little bit later, what made me think about this is that later it shows like Gordon, there's a painting, there's a picture in Gordon Cole's office of like an atom bomb explosion. It's not exactly like the Jaldea, but it's like of an atom bomb exploding. And it made me think of like going on sort of a J. Dyer hidden occult meaning type bent. That my theory, my idea that like the evil that is more important than Bob, because Bob is just kind of like your run of the, in many ways he's supernatural and stuff, but he's sort of like a run of the mill, like just psycho killer, demon possessed type guy. You know what I mean? Sort of like basic evil that you kind of see in shows. Whereas like if you study stuff like J. Dyer, if you're into like conspiracy theories and stuff like that, like I am, you realize that at this point that like the more overarching evil is sort of like the deep state, like the state, the surveillance state. There's the overarching state government, which really has a Luciferian element to it, if not the overarching element, at least like heavily infiltrated in the guise of deep state. It's a Luciferian deep state, influencing everything, and sort of like the evils of the devil are really essentially all around us in many ways. Bob represents one aspect of it, one layer of that evil, the sort of basic run-of-the-mill evil that sort of like penetrates people into the lower realms to get common people to become like psycho killers, rapists, you know, criminals essentially. But the more overarching evil, as Gordon Cole says, there's a more important enemy than Bob, essentially, he was saying, and that's the Jaldea. And since essentially Jaldea was this entity that came out of the smoke from the atom bomb, so I was thinking Jaldea is basically just symbolism for the evils of the deep state. That's the overarching evil, is the sort of the Luciferian agenda that manifests in the deep state, and it manifests itself in one major way in the form of like war. Because war is essentially like a blood sacrifice. And you know the Satanists are all about blood sacrifice, and war is like really one of the biggest blood sacrifices you can have. That's why even in modern times where it's pretty much unnecessary to keep fighting wars, it's like the deep state has to go around funding wars, like irritating factions to get to war with each other, so you can keep this continual tension going on, and so that essentially young men and women at this point will keep dying and sacrificing themselves for these bullshit causes, because it's a form of satanic blood sacrifice. That it's a well orchestrated like satanic ritual going on in the deepest factions of government control entities. So I was thinking that like the Jaldea character, you know, of course correlating with the atom bomb, you know, because he essentially came from an atom bomb, so it's symbolic of the war machine. Which leads me to think that maybe is Gordon Cole like the real enemy? I don't think Gordon Cole is like the real enemy, but he's sort of like him and Albert are sort of like the disgruntled, you know, gatekeepers of that evil, of that deep state evil. They don't really go out of their way to be evil, and they try to like do good things to make up for it by like helping Agent Cooper, you know, the good one, defeat the Bob. But that's really just sort of like first level sort of shit. In many ways, they're kind of the gatekeepers of the deep state because they kind of have to be because, the deep state pays their paychecks, They operate on like a system of silence, if you say anything, we'll kill you sort of thing. So it's like, and that's why you see like Lynch's character, Gordon Cole, and Albert always seem like really disgruntled, like they don't, like they're holding something back, holding some deep, dark secret that they don't want to be revealed. And I think that's why, like, there were those scenes where, like, of Gordon Cole and Albert just, like, always seems, like, really sad. And, like, Albert, like, starts crying for no reason, and there's no context was given to it, no explanation was given. And to me, I think it's because Albert being an agent of the state, and he's sort of like, his arms are tied around his back, to preserve these deep, dark, deep state secrets, this Luciferian agenda. And it just culminates in just sort of like a passive-aggressive like sadness that he can't like state directly because he can't give away the secrets. He can't give away the secrets of the Illuminati. So that's what I thought about when I saw that. But there's my kitties here. My little kitty's here. Say hello, Mazzy. Say hello. How you doing, kitty? It's Mazzy. Mazzy, my cat. Anyway. So. What are you doing, kitty goat? Anyway. What? What are you doing? Talking here. Anyway, getting back on subject. Shh, I'm talking, dude. How do you... What the fuck? So I think my cat got possessed by a Bob there. Wanted to like scratch my face out for no reason. I was watching one of the YouTube Twin Peaks season finale analyses just a minute ago, and one of them raised an interesting point that somebody said that perhaps Judy or Jude is actually Garland Briggs, the military guy, the general. Because Lynch is kind of playing with you because, Garland sounds similar to Judy Garland, which would actually make a lot of sense because Wizard of Oz, that Judy Garland that was her big movie. That's a film that Lynch has used symbolically before. There are like Wizard of Oz, excuse me. There are Wizard of Oz references all over. Wild at Heart, and possibly some other movies, but definitely Wild at Heart all over the place. There was a Wicked Witch of the East, symbolic character for the main woman antagonist, and also like the Good Witch of the West, I think, was like appeared at the end of it. So, and also Lynch likes to symbolically reference that movie because it has that particular movie had similar overtones to some of his films in some ways, because it's about because we find out at the end of of Wizard of Oz that everything that happened with the Lion, the Witch, etc. Was a dream. So I think David Lynch likes to use that film symbolically as a reference in his films to talk about how all life is a dream and there's multiple layers of dream consciousness and therefore all that. But the other thing is that if that is the case, that Judy Garland is Garland Briggs, the military guy, would make perfect sense, again, going back to the theory that Jude is actually the military-industrial complex, because as I said earlier, the evil entity, the smoke entity that comes out of the atom bomb, that creates Judy, is directly correlated to the atom bomb, so therefore it's a symbolic reference to the military-industrial complex. Actually, so that corresponds a lot, to the idea that the overarching evil is the deep state, is the military-industrial complex, and that makes perfect sense. Garland Briggs was the general, which typically he's seen as kind of a good guy, but they said that Judy is evil, But maybe what it is like Garland Briggs is not necessarily good or evil. He's got good elements, but he also has evil elements because in order to work within the state, he's had to do some bad things, including working on a top secret project, which he references several times in the second series. But we're led to believe that the top secret project is trying to find the entrance to the Black Lodge, but there may be other projects, including that might be related to, how the atom bomb created the evil Judy. So it all sort of corresponds in a way of like just trying to point to like the fact that the deep state is the true evil, which in some ways might even have to do with the fact that like we frequently see like Dale Cooper, the good heroic guy. He's got this doppelganger who's all evil and shit. And even after we think that's being resolved, we kind of see like the evil Cooper comes back in a way because he's real frigid and stuff. He's not outright committing murder or anything, but it kind of seems like he's come back. Some have theorized that after the evil Cooper, like Bob, died, that maybe they merged together. That's a possibility, but there's also the distinct possibility that like Lynch is just again playing with identity roles, which includes like set in stone ideas of what is good and evil. So I think playing with your expectations of set in stone roles of good and evil. So that's something else to think about. Oh, but in fact, if the good Cooper has these evil elements, and maybe in the last episode, maybe that's his true form. Cooper's true form is the good and evil combined together, and therefore, if that's the case, then it would make sense because tying in with the whole military-industrial deep state idea. Because again, saying that government agents and people who work for them aren't necessarily, some of them are probably pure evil, the ones initially creating these programs, but others are probably just conflicted, morally conflicted individuals who have both good and evil elements. And that's something that, knowing that they have this naturally original sin, if you will, this sort of combination of good and evil, that's something that the deep state and the controllers, the elites, they prey on that. They manipulate that in order to get people, possibly like Cooper, but definitely like Garland Briggs, the military-industrial general, and others. They manipulate them on this emotional, psychological level in order to get them to do what they want to do. Saying like, you want to look out for your family, don't you? Well, we're going to pay you to like do all these evil projects and like basically be a fascist. So, possibly comment on that. Okay, so at the end of episode 17, once the Bob character has been killed and revealed, and they have the projection over top of the scene of Cooper, and it's sort of like, what the fuck's going on? Now, to me, and he says like, all is a dream. So going back, correlated with what I was talking about before, it's about how I think Lynch is basically saying that like this life we lead is a dream, but there's many different layers to the dream. So most of the realm that is just sort of like most of the ordinary stuff going on, like the girl who runs the Double R and the relationship between her and the gas station guy, I forget what his name is, and like Audrey and her husband looking for Billy and stuff like that. That, and the whole Gordon Cooper, the Dougie thing. This is sort of stuff that happens on the first level of the dream, where it's like a lot of ordinary stuff, but like there's like cracks in the dream from the other layers to where like crazy surreal stuff can happen within the context of this first level of the dream, but it's still like relatively contained together. It's like real life. Like this is the first level of the dream. Like a lot of ordinary things, but crazy shit can happen. But there's many layers to the dream, just like David Lynch says, and this is frequently like something he explores. where he said, like, he was like, the quote that goes along, "I found that there was more than one layer underneath the first layer. There's more than one world, and many worlds under that." So, so it's like many layers to the dream, sort of a dream within a dream sort of thing. And as you dig deeper into each dream within a dream, it gets crazier and crazier because you're getting closer to the source of sort of like the infinite, So at the end of like episode 17, after Bob is defeated, and this whole thing with the projection, face projection. Long story short, like Cooper ends up like entering the White Lodge. I think it's either the White Lodge or the Black Lodge. It doesn't really matter. Point being, he enters a deeper layer of the dream where you go into like the deeper into the subconscious, into like crazy surreal mode. Okay. And different stuff happens. He meets the brain, like the brain stick figure thing, saying like, I am the arm. And eventually he meets Philip Jeffries, David Bowie's character, and at this point it's sort of getting into like subconscious dream logic mode where it's not instantly apparent what is going on. You kind of dig for the meaning, but it's sort of like a good like Dali painting. You look at it for a while and you begin to understand things on a different level of existence. It doesn't mean that it's meaningless. It's just that it's on a different level of consciousness that you have to dig deeper for. So I think that like Philip Jeffries' character says, what does he say? It's like, "Is this the tale about the girl on the lonely stretch of road," or something? So it's sort of like, but it's not like, and there's no explanation. There's no like, yes, it is. You sort of have to dig for it. But it's sort of like making you think, like, is that what this story is about? Is it really a story about Laura Palmer's death? Because at this point, the third series, like most of the Twin Peaks in the third series have nothing to do with Laura Palmer. Not really until the end does it have anything that like approaches Laura Palmer. So it's not just about her death. It's about the overarching infinity of existence with these characters. So really, that question also plays into mind like David Lynch's frequent experimentation ever since like the last episode of the second series, going through Lost Highway and some of his other films. There's experimentation with the idea of like doppelgangers, auteurs, and like parallel dimension versions of oneself, and basically how they're all just sort of like part of the yin yang, it's sort of like two sides of the same coin sort of thing. And so that's basically what that question is positing. Is it just about this person, or is it about everything? Is it about like their alternate versions, like all their possible alternate dimension beings of what they could have been? And it's also about like how we're all essentially the same person. We're all essentially the same dreamer, like dreaming in different bodies. You know what I mean? Like we all share the same soul. We all come from the same star matter. But it's all the same. So it's not just about Laura Palmer. It's about all of us. We're all interchangeable with each other. So essentially, he enters into the second layer of the dream, and different stuff happens, like surreal, some cool images, like the forest overlaid with like the dream room with the little man, whatever the fuck it's called. Stuff like that, and eventually, like, he meets Diane, like the real Diane, not the doppelganger Diane, the real Diane. And they decide to get in their car, and it's not really well explained, like, where they're going. Like, they're like, it's just sort of vague. It's sort of like, once we enter this place, everything could change, or it could be the same, So essentially, they're taking their car, and they decide to go to this place. past this electrical outlet where it fizzes out, and then all of a sudden they enter some other realm. Now, to me, I think that this is one of two things. It's either that they're entering a third, deeper layer of the dream consciousness, or they're entering sort of a parallel dimension, or it's both. Because once they enter there, there's like a weird, unsettling sex scene between Laura Dern and Kyle MacLachlan, where she's menacing music is playing, but then and she's sort of getting uncomfortable with Kyle MacLachlan, and he almost seems like he morphs into bad Cooper again. It's like playing with your notions of good and bad. So it's maybe good Cooper was the bad Cooper the whole time, or maybe they're just two sides of the same coin. It's original sin, like the evil is within you. Everyone has the potential for good or evil. It's all about intent and what you feel like doing. So really, the good Cooper is really the bad Cooper. At any point in time, they can become one or the other depending on their intent. So in this instance, it was sort of in some ways, once he entered that dimension, he sort of became in some ways some chaotic neutral aspect of the bad Cooper again, because she was making love to him and didn't recognize him, and something was kind of off about him. Lynch playing with the whole notion of doppelgangers again, and it was sort of playing with that sort of that auteur mentality, because it was sort of the sinister music was playing, and then in an act of genius, he started playing that one lovey-dovey 50s song, "At the end of the day, I'll be with you," superimposed over top of this menacing music. So it was playing with taking one scene, a love scene, and playing both, light, dark aspects of it, the light of a stereotypical scene where it's a love scene where it's some lovey-dovey music playing, and then the alternate where it's the menacing undertones. So it was she could detect, the evil underneath the surface, because two sides of the same coin. You know what I mean? And then she wakes up and she disappears, and he finds a note saying "Richard, I don't recognize you anymore. I have left. Blah blah blah." Signed Laura. And the subtext to be taken away is that they've essentially become alternate selves again. And then he sets out, and he eventually gets to a place called Odessa, and some weird scenes happen, and eventually he goes into a diner called Judy's. Symbolic meaning there. And he gets to this fight with these cowboy types, but then and then he gets the waitress to give himself the address of the other waitress of who he's looking for. And I guess this maybe is the realm of Jade. So in some ways, maybe this is him getting deeper into the mystery of discovering the deep state. Maybe, I don't know. It's not clear. But eventually, he gets this girl's address, and essentially it's Laura Palmer, but she's going by a different name, Kate Page, and she has no recollection of being Laura Palmer. So it's her identity has been dissolved, because it's an alternate dimension where she doesn't remember. And then it becomes a quest to rediscover herself, that she's the original Laura Palmer. I don't know. It's fucked up. And then they go on a long stretch of road. It's just this crazy epic scene where it just seems straight out of a nightmare, where it's just 10 minutes of just this long, just traveling down this long dark road, just and Laura Palmer is just sort of having it's almost she's talking to Cooper, but Cooper's not not saying anything, almost he's not there, he's just it's like one of those dreams you have where you're talking to a character, but they're not like talking back because they're not really there. So essentially, it's like a monologue. It's sort of like an inward reflection in a dream, and you're just sort of like essentially talking to yourself and sort of coming to terms with yourself, possibly coming to terms with the fact that like, you are that person, and you're just sort of like, it's like consciousness talking to itself. And essentially, the consciousness existence is like consciousness forgets who it is, forgets that it's everything, and so it fragments into the everyone, and that's sort of like the interaction of each other. That's the surface reality, is like consciousness pretending to be other people, but once you get deeper into the dream realities, and we're into the third one at this point, then you begin to realize like you are consciousness, like it's the same thing. And that's what it reminded me of. We're all essentially the same self, and that's what consciousness is overall. Consciousness, when it entered into the first reality, the first layer of reality, it fragmented itself. People, pretending to be other people interacting with each other. And when you realize within the deeper layers of consciousness that we're all essentially just one entity, there is no separation. And I think that's partly like what Lynch is talking about when he's talking about like when he's exploring the notion of alternate selves, doppelgangers, and two sides of the same coin, good and evil, and ineffable. So that was a pretty mysterious, epic, dreamlike scene. But then eventually they get into Twin Peaks, but it's like it's all different, because correlating to like episode 17 where he goes back into the past to save Laura Palmer, and he saves her, but I think in the process of doing that, like, he changed the past, like he completely fucked it up. So because they go there, and Laura Palmer's mom apparently doesn't live there, and there's another character called like Chiffont, who is basically that old lady who has like magical powers from like the second season, the first or second season. So again, but it's like in a new form, like she's like a young lady. So again, playing with the notion of like altered selves and doppelgangers. But they claim they don't know any Palmers or anything like that, and so it's just sort of like they're just sort of like what the fuck's going on, and they leave, and they're just sort of like sitting outside in the street. It's a really intense, scary scene. And like Laura is like looking back at the house, and like Cooper is in a state of like confusion. He looks back at the house and he's like, "What year is this?" And then you see Laura look back at the house, and she sees like some sort of dark entity in the window, one of the windows. And then you hear like a blood-curdling scream that sounds like Laura Palmer's mom. So it's like she's there in some context, possibly because it's a portal. It's a portal between two different worlds, two different alternate realities. One where Laura Palmer got saved, or Bob never entered like Leland, so like he no longer like lives in that house, so like they never moved to Twin Peaks in the first place. You know what I mean? So it's like one reality where like Laura Palmer like never existed, essentially. Teetering on the fringes, the dream sphere fringes with the other realm where like Laura Palmer's existed, and like the mom is still dealing with the evil energies of that house. And like, Laura becomes aware of this reality, aware of like the evil that's sort of like swimming between worlds, and after like Cooper's like, "What year is this?" Questioning like his reality. Like the lights turn out in the house, and she's like she's blood curdling scream, and then like there's like couple minutes of like this black, and like you know, menacing ambient music, and then like the credits roll, and you see like a still image of like Laura like whispering something in Coop's ear, and he just seems like he's just got existential dread on his face, and like that whole thing just like really like chilled me to my core, to where I was just like, for like an hour I was just like solid. It gave me like existential despair. Like it felt like one of those dreams, those nightmares you wake up to, and it's just like frightening. I felt in some ways it was trying to push like a nihilistic agenda, or trying to like push like, hey, there's like, either on the one hand, like, you know, there's nothing after we die, it's just like dead zone, or an even more frightening possibility is that there is life after death, but it's essentially like, you know, you have an option. So, and hell is not what we think it is. Hell is sort of like a nightmare you have, where it's like, okay, like, you know, some aspects of it are alien, but other aspects are like, I recognize this because they're a part of like my surrounding. You know, I recognize that schoolhouse, or I recognize that farm, or that part of town, or that part of the city, or woods, or whatever. But it's like imbued with a kind of like supernatural menace to it. And maybe that's what kind of like what Lynch is trying to say, is like that's what hell really is in many ways. It's sort of like it's an alternate universe of your own realm, but it's like imbued with like a sort of supernatural menace to it, and that's kind of hell. And if we're not careful, if we don't wake up, you know, if we don't evolve properly, we can get trapped within that hell realm, which is correlative to our own, essentially, where we just sort of like keep making the same mistakes, and we get tossed back into the Syrian recycling system, back into this earth, just to do it over again. So hell is essentially just, you know, the repetition of like living on the edge of a sort of a nightmare alternate realm to our own, if that makes any sense. So, you know, we have, and really, it's almost like he was saying when he said in the 17th episode, like, you are in a dream. It's all just kind of like trying to say, like, you know, this realm, this existence that we live in is a dream, you know, and that, like, you can't trust the state either, because the state has as much inside evil, like original sin within it, that like the normal populace does, because the devil is in the details, you know, the devil is in the design, you know, good wolf, bad wolf inside all of us, and we pick whether we choose good or evil realms. So if you don't wake up from the overarching evil, then you're going to get stuck in like these continual patterns of like of life, birth, death, like William Burroughs talks about, you know, like these continual patterns of the time, birth, death gimmick, you know. So, yeah, that's a lot of thoughts about what I have. I mean, at first I was just sort of like shook to my core. At the end, I didn't know how to feel about the ending. But when I think about it, it's pretty brilliant. Even if he leaves it like that, you know, it's kind of like it makes you think. Or if it opens up for like a whole other series to come out, you know, because theoretically, this is a series that could, if you really wanted to, you could keep this going on indefinitely. I mean, like, Game of Thrones, just look at Game of Thrones. As unpredictable as that is, it's getting into like its like 9th or 10th season or some shit now. This stuff could just go on forever because there's really no end to it, no end to the variation of fans you can explore, especially when you're like, when you have a show that like is normal on the surface, but like has so many different layers of like craziness beneath. It's like anything could fucking happen. So yeah, I mean, he might come up with like a 4th series, and that'd be fucking genius. Maybe it will be like much of it has to do with like he's stuck in like this alternate realm where he's like encountering all these alternate versions of like Twin Peaks characters. Maybe like I don't know. Maybe like, oh shit, what is his name? I don't know. Maybe Richard Horn is a good person in this one, and like he does good things, and maybe like Jerry Horn, instead of like being like a crazy drug-addled schizophrenic, like actually becomes an upstanding member of society who runs like a, I don't know, like a arts and crafts store or some shit. Who knows? You know, maybe everything's different in this alternate realm, and then they have to like explore through this realm of alternate craziness. Meantime, like the whole thing has centered around like getting Cooper back out from the lodge again because he got lost in there. You know, like theoretically, it's just something that can go on forever, or maybe it'll just end like that. Maybe it'll just end with them just sort of like lost. Okay, a final thing that I have to say about this video, Twin Peaks, at least for this particular video, guys. You know, Twin Peaks is such like has so many elements to it, so many layers, that like that's why you see so many of these channels like devoted specifically just to like analyzing it. But the final thing I have to say about the final episode is that, corresponding kind of like what I talked about earlier about the alternate selves essentially being, okay, so like in the dream state, if you want to think of the subconscious realm as connected to the land of the dead, at least on the afterlife, the first hidden layer of the dream consciousness, whatever you want to call it, the land of the dead. And the land of the dead, you know, the self is dissolved. So that's, and maybe in some sort of the first stages, or even like breaking into the first level of consciousness that are surface reality, you see like doppelgangers come about in alternate selves, and then in the second layer of reality, when it gets deeper into it, you discover a crazy realm of like alternate worlds and doppelgangers that appear and disappear. And this is all stuff that you see in dream consciousness, because I think that's in the dream state, whether it's a mirror to the afterlife, or it is connected directly to the afterlife in and of itself. It's all about dissolution of the self, dissolution of the ego back into the eternity, the infinite, as I talked about earlier. So it makes sense that you encounter alternate selves that you don't think are anything like you, or that you essentially lose memory, you know, of past selves or whatever, like the Gale, or whatever her name was, had no memory of her past, of her alternate life or past life, whichever you prefer, of as Laura Palmer. So, and I think that just corresponds to how existence operates in and of itself. Even if you want to look into Hindu mythology, the belief in reincarnation, and I know a fair amount about this subject, is that, you know, when we die, or one possible afterlife is that we're reincarnated into new bodies, and up until age 5, 6, 7, you can remember your past lives if you try hard enough. But after that, you forget them. You lose your memory of your past lives. And these were lives that you had parents who loved you, and you loved them, family, friends, all kinds of wonderful life experiences. It doesn't matter if it took place in the 1860s or the 1690s or the 2010s. You know, all lives are essentially the same in that sense. And then you die, and you become a new entity. And with time, you forget who you used to be. So the past is forgotten, which to us, in our egoistic minds, you know, in our limited perceptions of time and space, we do come to see this fan as a horrific thing, and it feels horrific. That's why the last episode of Twin Peaks was so jarring and unsettling, because it was playing with this, taking familiar characters that we all grew to love, and then thrusting them into an unknown realm, a nightmare realm, dream realm, land of the dead, where their selves that they had established, like, oh, Dale Cooper, oh, Laura Palmer, oh, Garland Briggs, whatever, and then that which is really in many ways these selves that we come to get to know, really is just a mirror to like our lives in general. The selves, who we think of. I am Xylen Roberts. Okay, you are Matthew McConaughey. She is Elaine Bennis, whatever. And these are just essentially impermanent constructions. Essentially, the infinite consciousness fragmenting into itself and pretending to be someone else. So when we die, whether we go for the land of the dead or we simply, eventually at least, go into either eternal light or eternal night, that those selves are dissolved. We either go back, we go back into the infinite, where what we were, me as Xylen Roberts, you as Elaine Bennis, go back into the ether, our souls go back into the infinite, and then it spits us back out into a new life, into a new form, a new child, a new self, an alternate self. So essentially, we are all doppelgangers of each other. Okay? So maybe that's what Lynch is, most likely that's probably what Lynch is talking about, because he's deep in the transcendental meditation, and he's big into Buddhism as well. So he knows quite a lot about these things. And that's all I have to say about that right now.
Hi guys, I'm David Lynch, and I sound a little bit like Gary Johnson too, but whatever, maybe I'm a hybrid. Hey, and I'm also an owl. The owls are not what they seem. Get it? Well, anyway, this is a message at the end of this video that Xylen Roberts here. Yeah, I'm also Xylen Roberts. Well, anyway, my point is that he's got lots of videos. He's got lots of fucking videos. You can see my face. Oh, okay, I'm not doing a very good job of this. Okay, anyway. Hey, he's got lots of videos. He makes music, kind of experimental, eclectic, alternative, electronic, whatever the fuck, singer-songwriter. Yeah, he makes videos. He's got music videos, and he's got fucking, he's got performances, and he does a lot of skits, like weird shit like this, but a little more like constructed and pieced together, and kind of psychedelic and surreal, whatever. And he likes to talk about conspiracy theories and discuss topics, esoteric topics, subjects such as vortex energy and what would happen if a 50-pound man got stuck inside a pyramid. What the fuck would happen? Would he decay at a slower rate than other human beings that were stuck in there? And if he had Thor's hammer, would he just smash his way through? So these are the mysteries of life. These are the mysteries of life, guys. So if you want to, there are lots of videos. So I'm sure there's some kind of video right here in this general area. Yeah, there's probably another one right here, and maybe one right here. I don't know, but definitely, probably a video right here or right here. So check them out. All right, thank you.